Okay, I've been complaining so much about the charging infrastructure for electric vehicles right now because honestly, it's truly a nightmare unless you drive a Tesla. So I decided I'm going to explain how simple it is and embarrass some people later on, but actually that's supposed to be in a different video. Today's video, we're actually going to focus on the simple way of charging your car. What do I mean by the simple way? Well, in terms of setup, in terms of maintenance, in terms of, well, basically everything that you have to put in terms of setting up a charger or charging your car. It's literally the simplest way ever. And it's also the easiest on your battery. Let's talk about AC charging. AC charging? What?
Dude, are you crazy? Batteries don't work with AC. They only do DC.
Yeah, we'll get into that explanation of what's actually going on, actually right about now. So in terms of AC charging your car, this is also referred to as slow charging or level 1 or level 2. For some reason, they have two different levels of AC charging. One is the ultimate slowest, but 2 is so ambiguous that it's weird in terms of their level system. So I just refer to it as two different methods of charging instead of level 1, level 2, and level 3. So for the first two levels, I just refer to it as AC charging because both of those levels are AC charging. How does AC charging work if batteries only do DC? Glad you asked. But before we do that, I actually want to discuss a few things about AC charging, and that's actually the applications in which you should be using it. This application of charging is usually referred to as slow charging. It's because, well, actually, due to the way it works, you can only get so much power out of it, and that amount of power you can get out of it is pretty slow. So because of that, it's referred to two different ways: slow charging or AC charging. I refer to it as AC charging because slow charging can mean anything to anyone. So yeah, there's that. So what is the common use case of slow charging? It's at home. Like, for example, I'm at home. So if I'm at home and I'm charging the car, I'd want to slow charge it. Other instances, well, basically if you have the car parked for a long time, you pretty much should be only using fast chargers for when you're on a road trips, or if you really happen to be in that bad of a pinch where you do need to charge a little faster. But when you're not, you're actually doing yourself like a lot of favors just by slow charging. First of all the fast charging is actually expensive, not only in terms of pricing at the DC fast charging stalls, but also in terms of setup, maintenance, and it's even cost longevity of the battery, because DC fast charging is actually very stressful on your battery pack, while AC slow charging, nope, it is just fine. It is nice and gentle on the battery pack. Well, depending on how fast that AC charger is working. But again, it's much more gentle compared to what you can get out of a DC station. But yeah, those are the applications in which you want to AC charge. Those applications are most of the time. If you're at home, plug it into a slow charger. It's fine. If you're at work and they allow charging at work, hey, that's great. If the shopping center happens to have one, ooh, really great. Pretty much reserve the DC fast chargers for those who actually need it, that are on road trips, or if you're in really that bad of a pinch and you need to juice up that quickly. I'll have a video discussing DC fast charging coming up soon, but for now we're getting into AC charging. Alright, so that's the applications of AC charging, which are typically found at home, sometimes in public areas, but most of the time you're doing it at home. So how does AC charging work, especially considering that batteries don't work with AC power? They only do DC. So because there's different scenes in which you're actually AC charging, I'm actually going to use the at-home scene. So let's discuss how it works at home. So at home, there's a couple different options in terms of setting up your charger, so we'll get into that in just a bit. But the basic method is you're running a circuit from your breaker box all the way up to your garage. Actually, you don't necessarily need to run a new circuit. Some garages have an existing circuit in place, which is great, but if it doesn't, well, you might need to run a new circuit then. But once you have that circuit from your circuit breaker to your garage, some garages have it already set up. Like, for example, believe it or not, I'm surprised that despite how old this house is, it's actually already set up to power an EV, to my surprise. Once you get that set up, now here comes the part where this is going to confuse you a bit. Time for the EVSE. The what now? Some people refer to it as a charging cable. You know, like the cable we use to plug in our laptops or charge our phones and such like that. That's what people often keep calling it. They call it a charger, except actually due to the way you AC charge a car, that cable is technically not a charger. That cable is called an EVSE, which stands for Electric Vehicle Supply Equipment. But the reason why most people still call it a charger is because calling it an equipment, which is technically what it's called, it's an equipment per se, sounds clunky. So most people still call it a charger. I personally call it a cable because for the most part, just a cable, even though it has this fancy box with some smarts in it. So anywho, power is flowing from the wall to the EVSE, then to the car. Okay, well, we still got a problem. We still have AC current. So how is it charging the car if AC doesn't charge a DC battery? Here's why it's called AC charging versus DC charging. In AC charging, the actual charging unit, the AC to DC converter, because even at DC fast charging stations, they're still hooked up to AC power. It's just, there's a big difference between them. It's just the difference between AC and DC charging is with AC charging, the converter is in the car and you're feeding the car. When you plug that cable in, that cable is giving the car AC power, and the AC to DC converter in the car is actually what is charging the battery. That is the difference between AC and DC charging. And having it set up this way is actually way smarter and way more useful, but there's a reason why we have the DC infrastructure, which I'll be covering in that upcoming video. But anywho, now that we got the basic flow of electrons covered, let's actually talk about how you set this up, and let's get a little more technical. So due to the fact that most of the actual charging hardware is actually in the car, that actually leaves very little to set up actually. All you really need to do is just attach an EVSE either to an outlet in your garage wall or outside, or if it really does come to that, then just run a new circuit, which yeah, that part's a little bit more complicated, but the best part about doing that is it's a one-time setup. That's it. You don't have to set it up again unless, well, for whatever reason, say your house burns down, heaven forbid. So this is where some people actually kind of worry. There's a lot of people that fear,
oh, then setting up this charger in your house, it's so expensive.
well, it can be expensive, but it doesn't have to be. So let's discuss the ways of plugging that EVSE into the wall or into your circuit breaker. A common way that some houses are set up, actually, well, you could, first of all, let's actually discuss the first option, which most people refer to as level 1 charging. I really hate this level system because it makes absolutely no sense. But level 1 charging is basically using one of these. Despite that I'm holding up a power strip here, please do yourself a favor and do not plug your car into this. This would cause bad problems. Do not plug your cars into power strips. I am just holding this because it is the simplest way of showing a 110 outlet. But anywho, believe it or not, most cars can actually plug into this. Now, is it fast? No, but for some people, it's actually fairly adequate. Using a 110 outlet on a 15 amp circuit breaker, it actually can deliver about 40 miles of range per day, depending on your battery pack size and how efficient your car is. But 40 miles a day, that's actually enough for most people to do their commute. And I know a bunch of people already that actually only use a 110 outlet in terms of charging their cars because they don't go that far. They're basically heading to town, a short distance, heading to work. Or if you can AC charge, say at work, say you can access a faster AC charger at work, then a 110 outlet should absolutely suffice. Some people can get by with it just fine. Now, there's some people who can't, and that's totally understandable. And in that case, that's when you might need to invest a little bit more, unless your house already has this installed. Like my house, actually. I'm genuinely shocked. Just by how old this house is, I'm surprised that it actually has a 240 volt outlet in the garage. This new 240 volt is now what's considered level 2, except I don't like using level 2 to describe this because I just hate the level system. It's bad. It doesn't make sense, especially to most consumers. It doesn't make sense. But yeah, if a 110 outlet doesn't suffice, then it's time to opt for something a little more powerful, which is available at your house. There's a couple different options in terms of the plug form, be it a camper outlet or actually the most common, a NEMA 1450 outlet. There's a few other NEMA outlets that you could use, but well, it depends on what's already set up in your garage. Again, some garages already have this set up, but some don't. And if your garage doesn't, then well, it's time to run a new circuit. But if you actually have a NEMA 1450 or 240 volt outlet of any kind set up somewhere in your house, use it. It's a much better option than a 110 outlet if for some odd reason 110 is just not enough for you. Yeah, in that case, you're pretty much all set up. In fact, I'm surprised that this house is all set up for it. Just, I don't have dibs on the garage, so screw me. So if you have to run a new circuit then, how big of a circuit should you run? Okay, yeah, at 240 volts, that's pretty much what you're getting through that. So the question then is amperage. How much amperage should I supply it? And the truth is, it kind of depends actually. The higher amperage you want to send through that circuit, the more expensive it generally costs to actually set that circuit up. So if you want a recommendation for me, personally, I'd go for either a 30 or a 40 amp breaker. But if that's too much for you, then it's okay. Believe it or not, a 20 amp breaker on a 240 volt circuit, that's enough to get you 100 miles per day, which is just fine. Going higher than 20 amps on a 240 volt circuit, that might be excessive to some. But I do suggest going higher for a reason, and the reason for this is if you actually want to get a second electric car, or if you're charging more than one electric car, then you might actually want the headspace where, okay, if you have two electric cars on the same 40 amp circuit, which, yeah, it's possible to do that thanks to Tesla here, as well as a few other EVSEs depending on how you set them up. Well, you can basically get the full 40 amps if you have one car plugged in, and if you happen to need to plug in a second car, hey, you can plug in a second car, and yeah, they're only getting 20 amps each, but hey, that's 100 miles per car. I think that's workable. So I can't really recommend anything specific in terms of which breaker to go for if you need to set up a new circuit. It all depends on your finances, how much you're willing to spend on that, or what your needs are. So I'll leave that for you to decide. Personally, I go for 40 amps, so that way if I need to charge more than one electric car, which I have a feeling I'll need to do that at some point in the future, because I don't think I'm going to own one car for my entire life. I'm pretty sure at some point I'm going to own two vehicles at a time, and both of them are going to be EVs once I actually get my Tesla, because oh geez, I am so tired of driving a gas car. And that's pretty much how you set up AC charging. I feel like I had to get more technical and such, but the truth is it's actually that simple. It's not really all that hard. Setting up AC charging compared to DC charging, it is way cheaper. It's way easier on the vehicle because due to limitations of AC charging, it's not as powerful, it's slower, therefore it's much easier on your battery pack, therefore prolonging its longevity. And most of this happens while you're asleep anyways, so it's far more convenient than having to go out of your way to a station, wait in line if there's a line, and then wait there doing basically nothing while your car's charging, unless, well, you happen to need to do shopping at whatever is there. And it's actually that simple. So once again, this is the method of charging you should be using most of the time. And there's two different ways to go about this. You could use the charging cable that your car comes with, unless it's a Tesla, because Tesla stopped including the cable with their cars for some reason. You can just use the included cable, or you could go out of your way and set up a really nice charging system within your garage, which personally I would do. And that's pretty much all I have to say about AC charging. That's at this point I'm just rambling. Do be on the lookout for my video about DC fast charging, and I'm not going to have as nice of a tone in that video because, oh, the DC fast charging infrastructure right now sucks, and the problem is we need it to work much better than it currently is right now. Alright, thank you for watching. Do me a favor and interact with the stuff below. My name is DeWolf, Random Alpha, signing out.